And so Jesus healed this man. He healed a man that was a cutter, and Jesus can heal you.
Find out on this episode of LED Live.
Hey everybody, good to have you guys with us today. We're going to be talking about a pretty sensitive topic. You may know somebody or you may struggle with this yourself, but a lot of people are experiencing a lot of pain in their life, and some people they try to escape that pain by causing self-harm and cutting on themselves. They try to escape the emotional pain by going to physical pain. So we're here with Chad today. He's done a lot of research on this, and he's going to give us some good practical tips on how to overcome this and how to help others. And I'm excited to hear what you got for us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And if you want to learn more about this, also go to our YouTube channel called Health and Homestead, and you can see other things that we share on research on various different mental health and physical health subjects. So that's Health and Homestead. And the thing that got me more interested in, my wife and I have been traveling for it's been almost 20 years now, and I think there's a real increase. Actually, you can see it in the popular media. They're realizing that more and more people are cutting and doing different forms of self-harm, especially during COVID. Wow. It is just kind of we don't know 100% why. Obviously, we know there's more stress, no question, especially during the lockdowns. During the lockdowns, people are alone, they're not communicating, they're not seeing each other face to face. You only see, you can't see a smile. Yeah. And so there's so many strange things that have taken place because of this, one of which is an increased depression, anxiety, and self-harm. And we were just spending some time at a school, and we were speaking to a high school and realizing that more and more even boys are self-harming, cutting, and so forth. You see this also amongst the young ladies. And so what are some of the things that we can do about it? Before we go into that, I want to talk about the fact that this is really a very normal part of human existence. Not healthy necessarily, but very normal. So I was thinking back through the history of planet Earth, and one of the things you see is you go back really, the earliest examples I know of personally are roughly 2,800, 2,900 years ago. You had in Canaan, in the Canaan land, you had these Canaanites. You had a group of people who followed a god by the name of Baal. And we can actually see them, even in connection with, they seemed to be frustrated. They were within a worship experience, and they began to actually literally lacerate their flesh. They began to cut themselves. So one of the things we know is that it's not new. This is not like, this is kind of like a new trend or something. No, this is a normal part of historical experience. You might be thinking, well, maybe they did that in touch with their religious experience. You do see even some religions today will do that. There's one religion that takes swords and they will cut their forehead over and over. Blood will be coming down, and they will do that. That's in the country of Iraq. A certain sect of Islam does that. You look back through history to things like Martin Luther. Martin Luther, the great reformer, he was a Catholic priest. The Catholic Church, they probably don't do it like they used to. After the Reformation, it even kind of changed the Catholic Church, as Martin Luther was a Catholic, obviously, and they would flatulate themselves. They would actually beat themselves. And now, why would people the world over, including ancient cultures, medieval cultures, why would they do this? Well, one of the aspects may be that they find some form of pleasure, not probably in the pain itself, but as the pain begins to go away and subside, you have an endorphin rush, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that at the research specifically on that subject. But one particular individual in history that we see did this, it came to my mind. I've heard about this in the past, and I've actually spent a lot of time in this book of the Bible. Mark chapter 5, verse 5, there was an individual who was a cutter. And it says that this man, Jesus came, he was next to the sea. He was in an area called Gadara, and the people there were the Gadareans. And as he came out of his boat, there was this Gadarean who came out to meet him. There are actually two. Mark only references one because he must have been the most prominent in his memory, or not in his memory, in Peter's memory, who he shared the story with. And this man comes, and it says in Mark 5:5, and always night and day, this individual was in the mountains and in the tombs, so he was living amongst tombs. He was crying and he was cutting himself with stones. And so this is, once again, 2,000 years ago. You go back further, we can see throughout Earth's history, we can see humans doing these things. And the good news is with this individual, that met Jesus, he ends up, it tells us that he ended up bowing down before Jesus, and his life ends up being totally changed. People were afraid to go into the area that this man was because of his outbursts of anger and so forth. But after he meets Jesus, he finds victory over cutting.
You wonder, like, you know, the fact that the Bible gives you the little information that he came out of the tombs, like that's where he felt comfortable. You know, isn't that kind of interesting?
Dark,
like we think of death and, you know, like scary movies. We portray people coming out of the tombs, and it's like this very scary experience. And it's like that's where this guy was like residing. You know what I mean? Like he was in this dark mental state in his mind.
I think that it's a great point. And some of the things is, as we begin to feel more depressed, we often gravitate towards darker things, right? You maybe want to watch a movie that is scarier or darker or more violent or whatever. And so we have this tendency to do that. Same thing, you know, like this man. He actually moved into, and you think of even some of the cultures, and this isn't to insult anybody, but if we have a culture that is thinking about or idolizing death or darkness or evil, it shows generally that there is some kind of sadness within our lives. This is not an insult. This is not to put anybody down. But Jesus actually came to this man who had that exact same experience because he wanted to give him a happier life. And this man went forth and began to change other people's lives. And that's the good thing, is that if you struggle with this, or you know somebody that has struggled, some of the simple things that we share here may help you to be just like this man his life was changed, and then he was able to go help other people out. So thinking about this, basically people, psychologists, psychiatrists, scientists have wondered, now, is there something different about these people? Is there something different about these people that as they cut themselves, it actually brings pleasure rather than pain? Like somebody else might be like, oh, I would never want to do such a thing. And maybe it's just that they're different. So they've actually done research to find out, what if they do certain things that are physiologically painful to people? How does an individual who is a cutter or someone who self-harms, how did they respond to it versus somebody that doesn't struggle with this? So they've actually done the research. So there's something that psychologists use, or researchers and medical professionals use to cause physical painful stress to people. It's been, you know, empirically validated, so they know, okay, yes, this works, and it's not like torture to the point where, you know, because if you came up with some really bad thing, like, we're going to do this very terrible, painful thing, they'd be like, no, you're not going to do that study. That's illegal, right? So this is called the cold pressor test. And the cold pressor test it's very simple. Anybody could do it, but they do this for tests to increase your stress levels, increase your pain without hurting you. And what you do is you take a vat, a bucket, some kind of container with ice cold water in it. And somebody has to stick their arm into the ice cold water until it physically hurts. And as you do that, your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate will begin to go up, the stress response begins to kick in, and you feel simply pain and stress. So they thought, well, let's see what happens. And so in 2010, in the Journal of Abnormal Psychology, Joseph Franklin and his colleagues, they tried this first with people who were cutters, people into self-harm, and then secondarily with the people who were not. And so what they wanted to find out, is it different for those who are cutters? And what they found out is that when you put somebody's arm till they're in pain, a cutter, that they actually, when they pull it out, that it brings back a level of well-being or happiness, we might say, that is higher than before they put their arm in the water, the painful water experience. So it actually increases their happiness.
So meaning like
How they feel.
as the return to I mean, the body wants homeostasis, right? So
Yeah.
it wants to like balance back out.
Yes.
So as it's balancing back out, then it goes, well, I feel better than I did right here.
Exactly.
So somehow
Exactly. So you might start here, then you go in there, and the burning actually makes them here, so they drop in their well-being. But when it comes back, it doesn't come back to here. It comes back to here. So, or wherever that is, we're giving the idea. So they end up feeling better. So then, well, now the question is, what happens in just your average person who isn't a cutter? So what they discovered is that when they put the average person there, they also felt better than they did beforehand. So they are not different. It's not as if anybody who you're struggling with, you may feel like, I'm just a different kind of person. No, you've just found a coping mechanism that makes you feel better. Makes sense, right? Very simple. But the difficulty is this coping mechanism is also hurtful. So thinking about that, you realize this is not something that, if you had a child, think about this. Maybe you struggle with it, or would you want your own child to do that, right? So sometimes it's like it's okay for me because I feel down about myself. I feel bad about myself. I feel I'm ugly. I feel people have put me down, or I've been abused, or whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be those things. But I feel bad, so it is okay for me. But if I had a child, I hope they wouldn't do that, right? And so thinking about that, well, number one, you are God's child. And God loves you with an everlasting love. No matter what's been done to you, you may feel dirty, you may feel ashamed, you may feel ugly, you may feel whatever. But there is a Heavenly Father who looks down on you, and He cares, and He has His Son Jesus who wants to set you free. And we're going to talk more about that, but I want to talk about the research on this. Now, it's interesting because back in 2013, this same psychiatrist, Franklin, and his team, they found the same thing worked. They had been doing it for years, but I don't know why they had to do the study again. But sure enough, have you ever heard of shock therapy? It's
they actually electrocute the brain.
They literally electrocute you. And my wife, she was working in a hospital, and when she was in her clinicals, she was a part of it where she would actually shock somebody, and you think kind of an interesting thing to do. And she said, I've never seen it happen, but I guess it's quite violent. Like it's not like, it's like, like an intense experience, but the same thing happens with that. You go through this traumatic, painful experience, but then, and often they may become it's so overwhelming to the body that they become tired for a couple days even, like it's intense, but then they have you feel better afterward. There's people who have bee stings. People with arthritis, they will literally take bees and sting them, and they will literally take them in some tongs and they will sting them, and they end up feeling better afterward. And so all of these things just give us a depiction of how our bodies work. Certain physiological things that cause us pain. And not only this, I've been depressed. I went through 10 years of depression. I've shared that with here before, that 10 years of depression, it was terrible. It was literally, man, I've also been beaten really good. I've had a couple of guys just beat the living tar out of me, and I deserved it. I fully deserved it. It was good for me. I needed it. But so these guys just beat the junk out of me. And I'll tell you, if I could have a choice between a beating like that or depression, I would take a beating. Because
Probably every time.
Yeah, I mean, like the depression is horrible. And so I think I can understand why someone might struggle with that, because depression is so rough. But the good news is there are things we can do to overcome that. And we have a whole video on here. Look back, and I don't even know what it's called, but we have one on the gut-brain connection, I think, depression. Look it up on Little Light's YouTube channel.
Overcoming Depression.
Overcoming Depression. Okay, we have one on Overcoming Depression. Check that out. And so I can totally understand why someone would want that. But what are some things that we can do? So I thought about this, and the psychiatrists or the scientists who did this study, they didn't make this connection. They just said, okay, they were just trying to figure out how do average people who don't do it compare to people who do it. And then I already knew about research on this cold type experience. We have a term for using hot and cold. What do we call it?
Hydrotherapy.
Hydrotherapy. Now, they didn't think about it. They're just like, oh, this is the cold pressor test. It works. It's painful. it doesn't hurt you. It actually benefits you. It increases your, psychological state. So I knew about some of the research. Multiple studies had come out already. And so here's research from the Journal of Medical Hypotheses. And this is just like a springboard study, this particular one, but this is not the only study done on it. But this just gives you the idea. The name of this study is Adapted Cold Shower as a Potential Treatment for Depression.
Cold shower.
Now, think about this. So there's something called hydrotherapy. In the research, they called it a adapted cold shower. Many of us who've been doing it for years, some of us do it every time we start feeling sick,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's kind of like
I think it's a 30% increase if you actually do it as a habitual thing. It actually helps your health by 30% not to get as sick.
that, like your immune function begins to. They have actually done research on it, and they found that by doing this. Now, the thing is, do any of you guys like cold showers?
Oh, you sit there and you think about it for a while, and you got to psych yourself out, and then like,
Totally. Like
depends on how early I wake up.
I know about the research. I know when I'm feeling down, I straight up do this. And and when I say down, I'm talking about specifically you start feeling like you're gonna get sick. You're like, man, I need. And so just to tell you how it works, it's called a contrast shower. They call it an adapted cold shower. What you do is you take a hot shower. When I say hot, don't burn yourself. A normal, warm, comfortable shower, and you do that until you're ready, and you're like you said, psyched out, and then you turn it to like 30 seconds to a minute cold, and then you go back for a minute on nice and comfortably hot, then 30 seconds cold back, and then 30 seconds, and you finish on the cold actually. And so this adapted cold shower can actually do the same thing. So you don't like it, you hate it, you're like, you're fighting it, but by the third time, it's what?
It's actually bearable.
Yeah, it's totally bearable. The third time, you're like, oh, this isn't so bad. But the first time, it's horrible. The second time, it's not fun. And the third time, it's still not fun, but it's bearable.
And the irony is, as we get into the winter months, right? You guys hate getting out of the shower and it's like freezing outside and you're like trying to heat up, right? You actually can just get out of the shower and it feels great.
Totally.
And you can totally walk around like wet hair, everything like this, and you're like, yeah, this is awesome.
Probably feels warmer outside than the cold you were just in.
Right? But that's interesting. I've never thought of it like you're actually like worsening the body's situation so that it like all of a sudden bounces back and goes, well, at least it's not as bad as that right there.
Yeah, totally. And think about it. And the researchers didn't really make the connection either. They're just like, oh, okay, they're the same. Everybody's the same. We just feel better after this. But then I thought, hey, I already knew the research on this. And so one of the things that we can do is, yes, cutting makes us feel better. But it's also, your body is a temple of God, the Bible says.
Right.
That our body is the temple of God, and God loves you, and he says that your body's like a temple. So like you think of like a church. And imagine if somebody came in and like, if you had a church and you love your church and you love your pastor, and then somebody comes in and just like defiles it, puts filth in it and rips the curtains and burns the place or whatever, you'd feel violated, right?
Interesting.
And our body is to be the temple of God, and God says specifically, that he doesn't want us to defile his temple.
That's a good point.
Because we're special to him.
That's a really good point. I
And-
mean, that application can be like so many other things too. I mean, just putting junk in it. Yeah, it's like anything. I've never actually looked at it in that way before, but that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, and I think that's something to think about, that you are special. You are special in God's sight, no matter how you feel about yourself, no matter what someone has said about you. Somebody, I just think we were talking in our last video about even young children, middle schoolers, sending naked pictures of themselves to each other. And I hear these things and it breaks my heart for them, because those things are going everywhere. And imagine anybody, not just for a middle schooler, anybody, you do these kind of things, and then if somebody puts you down, imagine what it would be like, the vulnerability, and there your picture is out forever, and the pain it can be. And so I simply say, I know people are in a lot of pain, and so these kind of things people feel like can help them, but God doesn't want you to defile his temple. He wants to actually dwell inside of you. He wants to give you peace. He wants to give you joy and fulfillment in life.
Amen.
But here's the thing. Hydrotherapy, taking these adapted cold shower, or what we call contrast showers, these things are helpful. They'll actually make you happier, and they'll make you happier like in a few minutes. So it's not like you have to wait a long time. But it is something you can do instead of just like cutting hurts, but then you feel better. This also hurts, but then you feel better, but it's also enhancing your immune function, right? So it's actually beneficial for your health. So doing this is beneficial, but one of the things I say is that it's not a cure. It's a Band-Aid.
So just to understand, is it like a form of deviation? So you just need to pick the better choice? So when someone's feeling sad and depressed and they're within themselves, they're trying to deviate from that emotional pain by causing physical pain, and then they feel that exhilaration. But a better way to do that, to get out of that funk, would be to take a shower. Is it sort of like when you have a headache and your head is pounding because there's all that blood in your head? So you use hydrotherapy, you put your feet in cold water and the blood rushes to your feet instead to calm your brain. But I mean, your feet kind of hurt. So it's like finding a healthy deviation or a distraction, for lack of a better word, from the pain that you're feeling?
I think that is part of it. I think that is part of it, is that it is actually, number one, it's not fun. So it's giving you kind of the same experience of cutting, because it's like, I hate this, I don't like this. You might even actually hate the cold shower more than cutting. You know, like you're kind of used to the cutting thing, but this might even be worse. But it actually has the benefit. There is the taking the place of something, and the good thing is, once again, this takes the place of the bad. But this doesn't cure the problem itself, meaning it might temporarily. It might temporarily give you, so you were here, you're down, and then you're in the cold shower and you're like here, you know, and boom, now you're a little bit better. But there are other things we can do to help overcome. Now, I'm not going to go into all those. We talked about some in the last one, but another one that fits very well with cutting or self-harm is a form of self-harm that can actually be beneficial also, and it's not really self-harm, is exercise, right? Exercise is another experience that so think about running. Do most people actually enjoy the run itself?
No.
Some do, but most of us don't. Most of us, I know when I run, it's not the run that I like, it's what?
It's
feeling
the
after.
feeling you
After.
get from running.
Totally. So what do you have? You have the endorphin. I mean, they call it the runner's high. I don't know that I ever had the runner's high, or maybe it is. Maybe it's just I do feel better after. I don't feel like, wow, you know, but I feel better.
Yeah.
I feel better. And so exercise is a form of like self-abnegation. It's like the flatulation or the torture, the self-torture, but after the self-torture, you feel better. And so, but this is one that actually has also positive effects rather than negative effects. And so we stated in one of the other videos that it's not some believe in that kind of the yin and the yang idea where you have the light and the dark and both dwell together in one individual, and you just accept the good and the evil. But no, certain things are actually harmful. Certain things are just not good. And the Bible uses the term temperance, which is avoiding things that are bad.
Altogether.
Altogether. You don't say like, I moderately use heroin. Just from time to time, I just use a little. You know, and keeps me going, you know, keeps me on an even keel. No, like moderation, you don't use moderation, like all things in moderation. Not all things in moderation.
Satan's
Like
slogan right there.
yeah, it's like, no, that's not true. So what you do, temperance is better than just moderation. Temperance is avoiding the things that are bad and moderately using things that are good. Because even a good thing could, you know, water could kill you, right? You can literally, you drink 10 gallons a day and you will probably die.
Yeah, you eat too many carrots, you will turn orange.
That's true, right? It is literally true. That's not a joke, right? And so learning to, and even with exercise, you can overdo exercise too. You can ruin your joints, you can do these kind of things. So doing something that, and that's why somebody who might be a cutter or someone who does some form of self-harm, burning, other people burn, that these things can, yes, they make you feel bad, but you could do something, and research already shows, they've done research comparing 3 different things, comparing people taking Zoloft, a depression medication, then they compared them to people who exercise, and it was the same study, who were depressed also, and then the third group was depression and Zoloft, the drug medication, so they did both, so 3 different groups, and what they discovered was 6 months later, each one of the groups had people who were statistically happier, they were doing better. But strangely enough, 6 months later, the group that was doing the worst were the ones who were exercising and on Zoloft.
Interesting.
Why? I don't honestly know why doing both is actually more detrimental. But then the next group that was doing a little better were the ones on the drug medication. Zoloft. And the third group, the ones that did the absolute best, that had the lowest levels of depression, were simply those who were out exercising.
And I bet they had cleaner livers.
Yeah, cleaner liver. Yeah, exactly. So your body's just doing better. So in saying that, doing the hydrotherapy is a Band-Aid, but regularly exercising, because part of it is this. I know each of us work in video or design and these kinds of things, and myself included. And because of that, what is one thing that can be difficult to do?
Get sunlight.
Yeah, sunlight. I just walked out of the studio here, and I'm like, it's still
daytime.
daytime. It's sunny out. It's beautiful out. Like, here we are in a cave, and it's like, I mean, watching it live or watching it, you might think like, oh, it looks, fine in there, but still, it feels like a cave in here, right?
There's no windows.
I mean, no windows, exactly. We were just talking about that beforehand, and so thinking about that. Long story short, living a healthy lifestyle, getting exercise. We have to actually make a decided effort to do it, because historically, did people have to think, I need to get my exercise?
No, they're plowing the fields and getting
Yeah.
exercise.
Totally. Like a friend of mine grew up Amish, still lives the Amish lifestyle largely, although they have a vehicle, but they plow their field with a horse, and they're just amazing. Their work, but so he never has to think like, man, I got to go to the gym.
Yeah, I gotta lift weights.
Yeah, I got to hit the weights. It's like, no, like when you're done with the day, you're done with the day. Like I'm going in and spending some time with the family, and they don't have to worry about all this Battlefield Hollywood stuff, at least not like this. And so you get the idea. But humans just used to live this way. You may be depressed. And here's the thing. We all feel like our depression is because of what's going on in our mind. And that seems logical. I've been thinking about this thing. I'm thinking about what happened in my past, and I'm depressed. It's because of that. That's why I'm depressed. That is a factor, and I'm not negating that. What has happened to all of us does affect our mental state. But when our body is functioning on a holistic level, like you had mentioned, was it equilibrium or something like that?
Homeostasis.
Yeah, homeostasis. When our body is functioning at homeostasis, stressors are less stressful. Does that make sense? So like, for instance, if you're carrying 100 pounds on your shoulders, and somebody puts 10 more pounds, you might give way. You know what I mean? Or like, let's say you have 200 pounds on your shoulder, or 300, whatever you could bear, just a little bit more weight can be like, bam, like knock you down. And so by not exercising, by not living a healthy lifestyle, by not getting out in the sunshine, by not doing various different healthy things, so the thoughts become overwhelming. The thoughts are like the feather that somebody drops on you. You think, no, it's not a feather, Chad. It crushes me what I think about. It does crush you. And I know what depression is like, so none of this is putting you down. If you feel this, I understand what it feels like. But what I can say is this, is that if you can get your body in a healthy functioning manner, it will become like, wow, what used to literally crush me isn't that big of a deal anymore. And so exercise, even the cold showers, these are important. One of the things that we talked about on our video, did we do one on the gut-brain connection, or am I wrong?
No, we just talk about it a lot because I remember having a long discussion with you about it, and so I've brought it up kind of a lot. But I think that,
There was two videos though. One was overcoming depression. The other one was something. And it was about diet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we may have touched on it, but this particular, you can see the research there. This is from the American Journal of Public Health. Actually, 2 different studies were conducted on this exact subject. So the first one was smaller. The second one was larger. And what it was one of them was in young people, and the other one was in middle-aged, normal, like older people. And what they discovered is that depending on how many servings of fruits or vegetables you eat in a day, it will statistically increase your happiness, your well-being, or your life satisfaction that day. But then it will forecast how happy you are the next day.
that's interesting.
And so this is the actual chart. Check this out. So on the up and down is your level of life satisfaction. We might call that happiness. On the bottom, from left to right, 0, you're at the lowest level of happiness statistically. And then as you eat 1, there's a little blip you probably won't notice.
Right.
And then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 servings of fruits or vegetables in a day, and you become statistically a happier person, and you become happier tomorrow.
I wonder, like, if you think about this, when you go to a vacation spot, like my idea of a vacation is like sand, beach, you sit there, you do nothing but drink coconut water and, you know, whatever, right? But when you go on a vacation like that, you're not sitting there thinking like all the vegetables you're going to eat, right? You're thinking of the different fruits that you're going to eat. And people typically like that vacation. I don't know if that actually has, I mean, I could see this being totally true.
You know, what's interesting about this, I've seen this before, is you think of the standard American diet, not a lot of fruits, not a lot of vegetables. And you're thinking, you know, I don't know. Look how easy this is to start. 2 a day. That's where you see your absolute greatest
Wow, good point.
gain
You're right.
from one to another. If you look at 7 to 8, it's not as great of a gain as it is from 1 to 2, or from 2 to 3, or 3 to 4. Your greatest gain is just go from 1 to 2. Now, that's an easy way to start. Just eat another fruit, eat another
Exactly.
vegetable,
A serving
eat another
isn't like
serving,
a bowl. It's
No.
like a handful.
and you're gonna see a big increase.
That's such a great point. That it's such a small. So some of you might be thinking like 8 servings of fruits or vegetables. Like, oh, I could never do that. But here's the thing: you could probably eat 2. Right?
Yeah.
And you could start with 1. You might not notice such a big difference. 2 would be better. At least 2, and you're on the way to something better.
So I used to live in California. Fruit is amazing in California. Like, I'm sorry, East Coasters, like you guys have no idea what real fruit tastes like, right?
It's better.
Well, I
It's-
have idea.
Totally, yeah. You have an idea from islands and stuff, but I'm telling you, it's totally different on this side of the country. But my wife actually was sharing with me, you know, you can buy frozen fruit that is usually frozen at its optimum point.
Yes.
So even though you say like, well, I don't have access to fruit like
So
that, yes,
true.
but you can go buy frozen fruit that
Right.
is that access to that. And some of those frozen fruits will mix a whole bunch of things. Like you can put dragon fruit in with pineapple and papaya, and so you can get a couple of different varieties really easily.
And you're actually right about that. That research has shown that some of the, now it's one thing if you live in California, pluck it from the tree yourself. That's as fresh as it's going to be. But when it comes to frozen, sometimes for many of us, frozen can actually be fresher than fresh because it may take weeks for it to actually, or months when it comes to apples and things like that, to actually get to us. But when they freeze it, they're freezing it at its, and I'm not saying just to eat fresh, but you can almost anywhere. That's the good news. So
You can get to it fairly easily.
You can put it in a smoothie and it's easy, you know?
That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
And think about this. Part of each one of the things that we're talking about is about delayed gratification. Meaning, suffer now, eat your fruit and vegetables, and then get a better experience. But here's the thing. So I say that, and we all laugh because that's the way many of us probably have thought at some point in our lives. I was not a big fruit or vegetable eater at all. I ate basically junk food, refined food, and meat, right? And so, like every night at 11 o'clock at night, I would eat a box of macaroni and cheese, the whole thing with Tabasco sauce and every single spoonful. So, and so what I'm saying is, well, maybe there's some tomato sauce in the Tabasco sauce, you know? But it's like, you get the point. It's like cheese and white flour, and so it's not nutritious, and so, you know, you're just not as happy. And then when you transition to these things, you start feeling like a different person. And so what we're hoping, each one of these things can be taking some of the load off your back. And then once again, as you take the load off your back, then even as those negative memories and oppressive thoughts that we go over and over and over, as we become, our back starts to straighten out and we're like, wow. And then the thought comes back, a thought that used to just crush you with depression. And you're like, nope, not going to think about that now. I got my apples to eat or whatever, you know, like you're going to go on feeling better and going on to the next subject. So on to the next subject, which is something that we always, go ahead.
Before you move on to that, I just want to like encourage the viewer as well. Test it. Test this. I mean, honestly, it's one thing to be like, whatever, I'm going to reject whatever you guys are saying. You're just talking about health, right? Try it. Just try it. I mean, it really doesn't take a lot of energy or effort to just try it. And if you're struggling with those kind of thoughts, just put a couple of these things to test and do the Daniel challenge. You know, okay, God, I'm giving you 10 days. You got 10 days to make this thing work.
Yeah, and that was so powerful about that. So, and Dr. Esselstyn, who is one of the 3 scientists that I know of that have shown that you can reverse heart disease, which we had talked about before.
He's an atheist.
And he's an atheist, but he did a study on this, actually 2 different studies showing that you could reverse heart disease. But in one of them, I find very interesting because you mentioned the number 10 days. And the reason that's there is because in Daniel chapter 1, which is in the Bible, in the Old Testament, there's a young man named Daniel. He was taken captive from his hometown of Jerusalem, taken to Babylonia, which is in modern-day Iraq. My wife comes from Iraq. And while he was there, he was forced into a 3-year educational system. And he didn't want to eat their meat because it could have been meat that the Bible said not to eat. And so what he did was he said to the leader, hey, can we just eat plant foods? And the guy's like, man, they might kill me if I don't have you eat the king's meat. The king's meat is the best food in the world. And so Daniel's like, how about we test it? And did you know that scientific historians, medical historians, I should say, medical historians tell us that is the oldest scientific study in all of recorded history. Wow. So Daniel and his friends say, okay, 10 days. Let's test it, see what happens. And you're like, come on, what's going to happen? Changing to a plant-based diet for 10 days? Come on, that's not going to make that big of a difference. Esselstyn, mind you, it was a mix between, I think they did drug medication within the 10 days too, but they put this dude on his cholesterol, which was like 247, which is clearly in the heart attack range. If you can get it under 150, your total cholesterol under 150, you're nearly in a heart attack free range. Wow. And this dude got it from like 247 to like right around 149 in exactly 10 days on a plant-based diet. He did use cholesterol-lowering medication, but we did the same thing with, I won't say who it is, but someone that's close to my wife and myself. And this person also, they struggled and tried to eat a healthier diet. We put them on a whole food, plant-based diet, and they were able to get their cholesterol down into the healthy range within 1 month. I mean, we're not, I mean, we didn't have it tested within 10 days, but the point is the change can take place even with your happiness with it very rapidly.
Yeah, so Esselstyn, interesting about him, because I've read his book. He got all the patients that nobody else wanted at Cleveland Medical Clinic.
They called them the living dead.
Yeah, they were like, we give up on these people. And so he was like, okay. And he decided to do something different because he's friends with T. Colin Campbell, who is doing some research on plant-based diet. And so he's like, okay, we'll try this thing. And so it was intense what they put those people through, but even years later, he had not lost a patient. And keep in mind, all these people had a prior cardiac event, stroke, heart attack, something like that, right? Bypass, I mean, they're in bad shape, 1 foot in the grave, another on a banana peel, right? And he had these people record everything they ate, and he told them, like, no, I mean, he was strict. I'm not suggesting this is for everybody. He was like, no oils of any kind, no nuts, no avocados, nothing. Like, you can't have any oils because all oils are a mixture of saturated and unsaturated fat. And you didn't want to get the saturated fat. But anyway, it was convincing enough what he saw these people go through. He went home and he's like, we're changing our lifestyle. And told his family, his kids, he's like, we're doing this. Like, I want to save your lives. He's an atheist. Doesn't have any, religious experience. He's like, no, this is gonna help your life, and I'm gonna extend your life and help save your life. And his son is the one that went on to create the Engine 2 diet book and cookbook, and he's a firefighter and helps go around all over helping firefighters get healthier because they're under a lot of stressors.
Yeah.
This was brought out in Forks Over Knives.
Some of it's in Forks Over Knives, but the other is in his book, which is How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease.
Yeah, but Forks Over Knives has a great explanation of the heart disease part anyway. Yeah, it does. And so something to consider, it changed my life. I actually went on this diet for a time. And by the way, one of the things that it also did for the guys in the study, they're older. These guys are probably 70s, 60s, and it reversed their ED.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good news, right?
Yeah, right.
Because remember, the ED, erectile dysfunction, is one of the main causes, the driving factors, is that the arteries, the penile arteries, begin to clog. And as they begin to clear that up, and it happens very quickly, which is the amazing thing. So as they did that, it actually fixed that problem. So they were very, very thankful.
What most people don't understand is when you have symptoms of heart disease, it's not just your heart, it's everywhere.
That's right.
It's happening in your entire body.
Your brain.
And so the ED is actually a symptom.
That's right.
And you go to the doctor complaining about that, that's one of the things he's going to look at is, well, what is your cholesterol? What is going on in the rest of your body? Because you're experiencing heart disease, more than likely.
Isn't the human body so amazing? And then by extension, God, our creator, so amazing. You put the right stuff in, it'll respond. It'll get healthy again.
Right. Amazing though that you can operate the human body putting junk in it. Like try that with your car.
Yeah.
You know, go drive around with candy bars and Red Bull in your car and see how far it goes. It will not go very far.
So on top of eating right, and by the way, you can do this. This is something that can rapidly make a difference. You can make a slow transition, eating a couple things today. If it's too late at night, go to bed, skip that, start tomorrow. And then you can add a couple more. And in time, get up to your 8 servings a day and feel better than you've maybe felt in your whole life. So that's one factor, though. But the next one is sleep. Sleep is...
Very nice.
It's very nice, isn't it, right?
And this is actually probably a struggle for even like religious people. Like, you know, even doctors and things struggle with this one because it's just like you're just trained to operate with no sleep or little sleep or whatever. I mean, even parents that you know barely get any sleep and constantly complain about this. I mean, this is a major issue.
It really is.
I'll tell you what, where this one makes the most sense to me is if you have kids, like, you know this better than all get out. There's a reason parents are like, I've got to get my kids in bed by a certain time because they all know, if those kids do not get enough sleep, the next day is completely different, right?
Good point.
So
That is so true.
it's so evident if you're a parent, like, and you think about yourself even as a parent, like if the kid's not getting enough sleep, and I watched my wife go through this for a long time. She wasn't getting enough sleep, you know, and you just how much that compound effect, you know, wears on everybody.
Everyone walks around with horns.
You know, I think about what you're saying is, and we think, Chad, I'm old. It doesn't affect me like it does my kids. And yeah, you can put on a better face than the kids, and you can try to, because you got a fully developed frontal lobe if you're over 25 years old, and so you can really put on the show that it doesn't affect you, but it affects you, right? So you think like, that's not the factor for me, but getting to bed. When is a good time for a kid to go to bed?
Before 9.
Yeah, right. For kids, it's like, man, if you get them to bed by 8, they'll be like angels the rest of their life. You know, not necessarily, but you know, but you get humans to bed, even adults, between 9 and 10, and 9 is even better. If you really want to be the happiest you can be, consistently going to bed by 9 o'clock is fantastic for your mental health. And so when I do that, and I know I used to stay up 2, 3 in the morning. Like I said, I'd eat mac and cheese at 11 o'clock and I'd stay up till 2 in the morning every night, and I'd sleep at school, and it was just, I just wasn't happy. And then I ended up going to, I gave my life to Jesus, my life was changed, and then I went to a school, and my roommate, I was like, I'll just do whatever he does. He was in bed by 9:30, we were asleep, and I was like, whatever he does, and he'd wake up at 5 in the morning, and he'd crack his Bible. I just thought, whatever he does, I'll do it. And at 5 in the morning, the light turned on, and I look over, what does he do? He doesn't even get out of bed. He doesn't stand up. He just rolls out of bed and starts praying. I was like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. And I just rolled out of bed and started praying. And then he's like, right when he was done, he started reading his Bible. I was like, all right, I'll read my Bible. It's 5 in the morning. And then he read his Bible until 8 o'clock and went to breakfast. I was like, all right, read the Bible for 3 hours. And so we did that the whole time. And I was like, you know, praise the Lord, I had that roommate. And I felt during those months with that, actually, I ended up getting another roommate, because that one was only there for 2 weeks. I got another roommate, and 5 o'clock, I did what everybody does, right? Flips on the light and rolls it down and starts praying, you know, because that's what you do here. And so you know what my new roommate did? Yeah. He rolled out of bed too and started praying, you know. And I didn't think about it until years later. Oh, he probably did that because I did it because the other dude did it. You know, it's like, so we can all be impacting somebody around us. So, but long story short, I felt like a champion because of that. And you may think, putting these things together, remember, each one of these things, if you implement, is taking like 40 pounds off your back. Each time you're taking 40 pounds off your back so that those mental stressors will become later like a feather. That's what we're hoping to do so that we have no desire to self-harm. That's what we're hoping. Now, another thing.
Oh, before you move on,
Yeah, please.
the same thing with the shower, taking cold shower, hot shower. First time is terrible. By the third time, it's bearable. It's the same with waking up early. The first time, I mean, you roll over before you even say, "Dear Jesus," you're back to sleep, right? But you keep doing that, it gets easier, it gets better.
Right.
I love that, sister. That is, and that is a point too, that with each one of these things, the first time you do them is the worst. So for instance, if you're not used to eating any fruits and vegetables, literally, if you're used to eating like Twinkies and that kind of stuff, you eat an apple after a Twinkie. And it's like, ew. Ew.
Why am I going to eat these?
Yeah, like who would eat an apple? But when you have like, you know, a peanut butter sandwich with healthy, peanut butter and some whole grain bread, and then you bite into an apple and you're like, wow, that's really good. That's fantastic, And so the point is, it's making transitions. It's making transitions, and as you do, they get easier, and at some point, you begin to just love doing them.
Yeah.
So the food that I eat now, which I didn't, I'm on a total plant-based diet now, so Esselstyn finally said, he's like, okay, you can have 1 ounce of nuts a day. Initially, it was no nuts whatsoever, and later on, he's like, okay, one ounce of nuts a day.
So what is that, like 2 almonds?
It's a whole handful. It's one whole handful. Whole handful. And it's funny because friend Scott Ritzema was over, and his wife was like, so I told him it's 40 grams, the research shows, and we're like, well, she's like, how much is that exactly? And we're like, well, we got a scale right here. We pull out the, almonds and we measure, and they say a handful. It was exactly a handful. Wow. So if you want to know, the research shows that 1 ounce or 1 handful of nuts will give you all of the cognitive or the brain benefits, and any more than that adds no cognitive benefits. So that is like, when it comes to it, that amount is good. If you're looking to lower cholesterol, keeping it at that and no higher would be better. But we're not talking about cholesterol.
I think there's a reason why God made a walnut look like a brain.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it does things like that,
It totally looks like a little brain.
hints.
Yeah.
Yeah, eat this. It'll be good for your brain.
So next point in our list of things that may help with self-harm, a doctor friend of mine that I'm guessing you've either all heard of is Dr. Neil Nedley. You've heard of Nedley. So Dr. Nedley is, in my estimation, one of the greatest doctors in the world, and he has amazing both the research that they do and working with people with depression and so forth. And one of the things he points out is most all of the people that come into his clinic struggling with depression also struggle with pornography.
Interesting.
And if you struggle with that, watch our last 2 episodes, right? We did 2 episodes on that. You're not going to want to miss that. But one of the things I would challenge you to do if you are unmarried or you struggle with pornography is cease consumption of those things, and your brain may begin to heal. It's just another one of those burdens, those weights that you're stacking up on your back. There's an old story from 500 years ago, literally, called the Pilgrims Progress. And it is an amazing, that book, it was the most popular book in America next to the Bible.
Wow.
For many years. Because it's like blow your mind good. I've gone through it multiple times. And in the Pilgrims Progress, it's the story of a guy named Christian who has in the Elizabethan tongue, he has a burden that lieth hard upon his back, meaning he has a heavy weight on his back. Whatever's in it, we're never told, but it's very, very heavy. And he's walking around, and life is a burden. And there's even like in the drug culture, there's the monkey on your back illustration. You're walking around with a monkey on your back. So everybody's kind of used this illustration. And so at this point, we're trying to take the monkey off of our back. We're trying to take this sack off of our back. And the good news for Christian, his life was changed when he came to the cross. He came to the cross, and the pack, this weight began to fall off.
Rolled away.
The burden rolled away.
I mean, interesting that Jesus used that illustration of, like, take my yoke, it's light, give me your burdens, I'll take them away.
And he takes them all. And so we'll get back to that too, and that's exactly it. And so, but I would challenge you, one other burden is the sexual burden. Watch the videos we did on sexuality, because it's not just porn. You may not struggle with porn. You're like, porn's not my thing. I just love having sex with people. And, but we show the research on that too. And that also having out of marriage sex, the research shows that, especially when it is things like one night stands, increases the chances of depression. So separating yourself from these things, and by doing so, you're letting go of that burden. You start feeling lighter. You start feeling better. It'll take time at first. It may be a struggle, but we tell you more on how to do that. And some of that is the same things here. So I would challenge you to stay away from sexual relations for a time.
There's so much packed into that phrase. As Christian looked to the cross, his burdens rolled away. Or when people say, look to Jesus, or, all you need is Jesus. Well, yes, but it means so much more than that. Where do you find Jesus? In the Bible, yes? And every single principle you laid out can be found in God's word. So it's not just like standing there looking at the cross or standing there looking at Jesus. It takes work. It's very practical. And what is meant by that phrase is dive into the word of God and transform your life, or you help accept his help in transforming your life.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Just going over that, someone could miss out on that. It is not just looking at a cross on a church or on a building or on a wall or on your neck or whatever it is, but it is actually spend time in looking at the life of Jesus, seeing what he has done for us.
Seek and you'll find him, right? You got to look, and God will reveal himself.
That's right. And he says, and you shall seek me and you shall find me when you shall search for me with all your heart. And he wants to set us free. And so, the healing is through both the mind and body. We think, once again, I thought during my depression that it was basically the thoughts that were my problem. That it's the thoughts that are my problem. And I'm not negating the thoughts, because the thoughts are a problem and they affect our physiology. But once again, and I keep illustrating it, the burden on your back, which could be physiological, which often is, because even Dr. Nedley's program, most of his program, he does do cognitive behavioral therapy. That is a key component, very important component. But much of it is physiological. It is changing the diet. It is getting exercise every day. It is getting out in the sunlight. And if you can't get out in the sunlight, what would you do?
You can buy one of those lamps, right?
Yeah, you can buy these lamps, specifically like Amazon.
Tanning.
You could,
You're laying the tan.
Those vitamin D pills?
Yeah, vitamin D. Vitamin D is a potential option also. And so the lights do something even different. The lights actually don't give you the vitamin D, but vitamin D might be a benefit if you are low in vitamin D to take the pill. But as far as the boxes, they just have the light hit your eye and help you get your body back to that homeostasis, the way you feel after being out in the sun, even though it doesn't actually do the same thing as the sun does. So one of the things, the mind and the body are connected. And one of my favorite quotes here, and we're just about to finish, is that this mind transformation quote. Never forget that thoughts work out actions, repeated actions form habits, and habits form character. And so this is kind of the summation of all of mental psychology, not necessarily physical psychology, things that are connected to the body, but mental psychology is summed up in this thought that never forget that the things you think about, the thoughts you have, they become actions. The repeated actions become habits, and the habits become your character. And this can be true with your thoughts. And as you begin to change your physical habits, as you repeat those new physical habits, they'll become a new, habit that becomes a new part of your character. So as you start eating better, it will become as normal as eating junk food, right? So, and preferably you'll start to back off the junk food, but it will become just as normal. And the good news is your taste buds change, so you end up enjoying the healthy food every bit as much as you enjoyed the junk food. It's really amazing that like I love food in my simple plant-based diet that I eat now. I love it every much as I loved the junk food that I used to eat. But I actually enjoy it better, and it changed my mind and my body, and I feel good afterward, and I don't feel like, I shouldn't have eaten that, you feel better. And so the changes will take place. Allow your mind to be changed, because you won't be changed just by trying to change your actions. And God can actually be a part of healing the mind. And that's what Mark chapter 5, we talked about this man who was by the seaside. There's actually two of them, but in this text it says always night and day this man was in the mountains, in the tombs, crying, cutting himself with stones. But then it has a beautiful word, and often when you see this word in the Bible, something good comes after, and it's the word but. So here he was cutting himself with stones, crying out. The guy's just totally unhappy, but it says But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshiped him. Now, he didn't even know who Jesus was, as far as I know. I doubt he knew him. But when he saw him, there was something in his soul that said that that man has the answers to all of the things that are going on in my heart. What a beautiful thought. That man right there, he may have dirty feet from walking down the dusty roads with those sandals. He has rough hands from working years and years of at a carpenter's bench. But that dusty man with those rough hands, he has exactly what my soul has been looking for. And you know what? Jesus really does have the answers. And I knew that when I was depressed. I knew Jesus was the answer. I spent time with him daily, but I still felt guilty. I felt just totally guilty. I was totally depressed. But once again, as my physical health began to change, then my mental health, the same thoughts, some of those same thoughts or temptations would come to my mind, but because the physical burden was gone, the mental burden was, okay, I just bring that to God. Simple as that, leave it be and go on with my day and I'll be happy. And so Jesus healed this man. He healed a man that was a cutter, and Jesus can heal you. And he can also, because you might be like, I can't take a cold shower. I can't eat apples. I can't get out and exercise. I'm too depressed, because sometimes people are too depressed. And I say none of this to be funny. There are people who are so depressed they can't get out of bed. They cannot get out of bed. People go years, maybe just going to the bathroom, simply. And God can help you just where you are. And as he helps you, once he gives you the strength to maybe add an apple to your diet, it doesn't have to be an apple, whatever you like, pick the fruit you like to begin with, right? You can even eat things like dates. Whew, I love dates. We just had some today. They're very, very good. Even simple things like that, even dried fruit. I got a whole video on dried fruit. If you want to know how dried fruit healthy, go watch the video. But it's powerful information on that. So this is the thing. By doing these things point by point, one thing at a time, your life will be changed, and you can get to the point by God's grace where you don't even feel, you don't need to cut yourself. And what we mean is this, is that if you feel good, you'd never do it. And God wants to bring us to that point, but you are his temple, and he wants to dwell in you.
Good point.
2 misconceptions. 1, I can't eat healthy, it's too expensive. I disagree. It's actually cheaper than the other lifestyle. Why? Because you're saving on a hospital bill. That's 1. 2, I can't exercise and do these shower things. I don't have any time. I would say, wow, well, really, if you don't have time for yourself, you shouldn't have time for anyone or anything else, because if you yourself are unhealthy, anything else that you do would be unhealthy and counterproductive. So it's really like a shift in priorities. I think it's really key that we take time to make sure our temple is clean before, what's that verse? Take out the mote or the beam in your eye before you talk about try to help the person with the mote in theirs. And in another way, work on ourselves so we can be the best that we can be for other people.
Wow.
In this story with this person, the way that I like how Matthew kind of even illustrates it out, like the 2 men were sitting at the feet of Jesus. And then, of course, when they're getting up and leaving from the people telling them, hey, you need to leave because, we're scared of what you just did. We hear these 2 men are in their right mind. And the men go, well, take us with you. And Jesus says, no, stay here and go and tell people what you've done. All of a sudden, they were immediately in a situation now where they were going to turn around and bless other people. Not only were they scaring other people, but now they're going to go actually bless them with leading them to Jesus. So I think the same thing can happen with you as well. Depression. Totally. You may feel so depressed that you can't see other people. It's all wrapped up in your world. But the second that you get freed from that, it's like God can use you now to go and unchain other people from that situation.
That's a beautiful point.
Please. Okay. I just want to share a little bit.
Yeah.
Before I changed my lifestyle and my diet, I had some issue with anger, but then I changed, and I guess some of my friends noticed how I was I was here, but they just asking like, how can you stay happy and then you get enough sleep even though you're in college? So and then I shared to them why I can be like this. And when they actually see the result, they're more likely to follow what you're doing.
That's awesome. Love it. And, this is my last point, that Jesus went through, he was cut, I mean, he literally was lacerated with whips. He was beaten. He had a crown of thorns put upon him. And you think of the whip wasn't like a standard whip would be insanely painful. Like, could you imagine a man with a Roman soldier with all of his might whipping you as hard as he could 40 times -1? Because they would do -1 because if they did one more, they would actually go to jail. They would be punished themselves for doing 40, or if they would go above 40. So they would do 39 just in case they messed up. And Jesus went through this, but on the end of those whips, an archaeologist friend of mine shares with me that they'd put like shards of bone or maybe glass, and they would have these on the end. So these are literally ripping into the back, lacerating the back of Jesus while he had, they put this crown of thorns on his head. He's going through all of this. And the Bible has this amazing statement in Isaiah chapter 53. It says, with his stripes, we are healed. With what he went through. So the cutting that was done to him, in essence, heals us. And one of the things that Jesus does, one of the ways that we are healed in our lives from abuse as children or from any difficulty, is to look at the life of Jesus, go through the Gospels, think through his life, spend time reading them, and see how his experience is the experience that you go through. And we're actually healed through the suffering in his life. We are healed. It's as if the whip comes down on his back, lacerates his back, and then the laceration in our back disappears. Like, what a beautiful picture. And so Jesus went through the suffering so you don't have to. He wants you to have eternal life. He wants you to have peace in your heart. He wants to set each one of us free, and he can do exactly that. So wherever you are right now, you can give your life to Jesus. You can say, Jesus, I need something more to this life. I need something to get me through, something much better than cutting or self-harm in whatever avenue. Jesus, I need you to change my life. And please, Jesus, give me strength to implement some of these simple principles to take the burden off my back.
If you've heard this today and you're one of those people that's struggling with this, there's a lot of people struggling with depression. Just like Chad said, he's been there, done that. I've been there, done that. It's rough. And sometimes, you see this information and you need somebody to help walk you through that. Contact us. We have resources in this area where I know a couple and that they teach these very same things. He's a doctor. His wife is going to school to be a counselor. They go to my church, and they help people get through these things using the same methods that we've been talking about today. So if you feel like you need some extra help, you want somebody to walk with you through that, they can help you do that. So contact us through our website, littlelightstudios.tv. Click on the contact us, there's a form, it'll come to me, and we'll point you in the right direction. Other than that, thank you, Chad, for coming. Again, where can people get a hold of you and your ministry? What's the website?
So our website is anchorpointfilms.com, and our YouTube channel, if you want to learn more about these things, is called Health and Homestead. It's a mixture, so just look up Health and Homestead, and it's a mixture of healthy principles to live a healthier life, happier life, and also country living and homesteading.
All right. So check out those resources. If you do, you'll likely be happier. You also make Chad happy for checking out his resource that he's putting together just to help people. And so we thank you for watching this episode. Again, we just want to encourage you guys, just try it. We're saying take one step at a time, do things, give it those 10 days and see if it makes a difference in your life, and trust God through the process. So thanks for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video with somebody who needs it. We'll catch you on the next episode. And this has been LED Live.
Visit our brothers at schoolforprophets.tv and watch From Babylon to America, which has over 5 million views on YouTube alone, and follow it up with America to Babylon. Check the description below for links to this and more.